Good afternoon and welcome back after our summer break. Lounging in the sun, fending off German tourists. We're back with a new episode of Unfinished Business, the podcast that talks about the business aspects of making a living online and in creative industries. I'm Andy Clark, and joining me today is
Rich Rutter, hello.
And we have a guest, celebration guest, to welcome us back for this new season. It's Andy Bell. All right, mate.
Good to be here. I remember listening to this podcast when I was 7 years old. It is quite far from the truth. Probably early 20s, maybe.
Thanks for listening,
And I'm definitely not
we'll
that
see
now.
you on the next episode.
Sorry, Andy, I had to get you with that one.
Do you know,
You
it's
just you left me there.
my big birthday coming up in November, you know.
You're never 40.
Which number's that?
Oh, you flatterer. You flatterer.
Is it bus
Yes.
pass year this year, is it?
Yeah, it might actually be my bus pass year.
Mm.
I
I'm
know.
looking forward to bus pass year, to be honest.
Yeah, but the trouble is we don't have any buses up here.
That's the same with me as well, yeah. There's no buses to catch.
Literally, there are no bus services whatsoever around here. We have a bus shelter, which we're thinking of turning into some kind of, I don't know, art gallery or something, or vegetable stall or something in the village because, yeah, we don't have a bus.
We have so many buses. The bus company owns buses.co.uk.
Wow.
That's how bussed up
That's an
we are
SEO
in Brighton.
Yeah.
Andy, I've been meaning
Yeah.
to get you on this podcast since you were like, when I drew up my list of people that I thought would be a great idea to have on this podcast, you were sort of second or third on the list, actually, but fairly
top.
near the top of the list. Because you've been doing some really interesting things in this kind of web education space over the last kind of few years, I suppose, alongside what you've been doing creatively with your studio and everything else. So I really want to get into that during our kind of conversation. But before we get into that, I always like to try to find out, how the hell did you arrive at this point in your career? What was your sort of journey to getting where you are now?
Well, I never wanted to do this job, if I'm honest. But I think if you were to talk to 18-year-old Andy and say, you're going to be a web designer, I'd have probably been like, oh, really? I wanted to be a professional musician. That all fell apart. But I got into web via music. So I took a bit of an interest in it while I was doing that sort of stuff and started building websites for bands and customizing MySpace profiles and got really into it and then didn't touch web tech for a long time. I came into the industry traditionally as a designer and then just got into CSS out of spite, really, and people weren't building my stuff properly, so I started doing it myself, and now I'm just really into CSS and everything that comes with it, and just sharing that knowledge. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird journey. Most of it's been in agencies, some horrible agencies, some good agencies, and that's just the way it goes in client services, and then yeah, here I am now.
What stopped you being a musician?
Yeah. So I was drums. So I did grade 8 stuff on drums, did all that, and then I went to audition at Leeds College of Music for their diploma course. And the pathway for that was, the ideal pathway was, okay, well then become a session musician and then go from there. But the leap from grade 8 up to diploma is unbelievable. Night and day. And there was only place for 4 drummers, and I'd just had chronic flu just before the audition, so I'd been bedbound for a month. It was swine flu era, do you remember that?
Mm.
And I got it, So I was like really ill, but they still made me do the audition on that same day because they auditioned everyone at the same time. So like they had, you'd had like 10 drummers turn up, you'd have like 15 guitarists, and all these different musicians would turn up. You had to do like a music theory exam for 3 hours. Not my strongest suit. And then you had to do your audition. And by that point, I was like the same color as my wall and just like sweating profusely. And then they just stuck sheet music in front of me and said, play that. And I just flopped it completely. So all the confidence went from there. And then it was just like, so I went into music production instead. And then that was the way I got into the web, because part of that degree course, which I never finished, was doing Flash web design. And I bloody loved Flash. I thought, this is really cool. I really like this. And I was already doing like design stuff as well. So it's like, well, I'm just going to sort of get into this now. And then, yeah, the rest is history. Here I am.
Do you still play?
Not as much as I want to do. I'm on a long campaign to talk my partner into letting me get a kit at home. But they're very loud, and we sort of, I don't think they're too happy. So I've got my kids playing. So one of them's learning piano and one of them's learning guitar at the moment. So I'm sort of building up a 3-piece band essentially. So the electric kit will come. Yeah, just got to keep chipping away at it, really, chipping away at the idea. And then at that point, maybe I'll just totally pivot again, Andy, and just go into that instead.
Well, all
Almost
the best
38
bands are
full
three
time.
pieces, we've got to say. All the
Power
best bands
trios.
are power trios.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, which is good. But yeah, I wish I could play more, but such is life and busyness and stuff. So
Your way in.
no Jeremy Keith. Yeah,
I was about to say Jeremy Keith. Yeah, your way in is quite similar
Yeah.
to Jeremy's, through music and then doing the band websites and then just kind of falling in love with CSS. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Jeremy. I look up to that the way Jeremy does it, because what Jeremy does in music, which I really like about musicians, is you can tell that the core of music is still like fueling him. Like the art, and he's not like chasing. You're not chasing Spotify algorithms or anything like that. Like Jeremy Keith plays music because Jeremy loves playing music, right? And that's really good. And he does a lot in the music community as well. Like the session that site he runs is really good. And yeah, maybe one day when things are less busy, you can imagine spending more time on that sort of stuff. But yeah,
Well,
maybe not in the next few years. Yeah.
Pin a thought there, because your description of why Jeremy does what he does in music is really relevant to what I feel is lacking in why people do web stuff.
Yeah. Agreed.
People chasing
The soul has gone.
Yes, people chasing, the SEO, or they're chasing the clicks, or they're chasing the conversions, or whatever it is, and it becomes a numbers game rather than an expressive art, which I think is what's lacking. But we might come back to that. That's my pet subject. So let's not veer onto that. Flash was great for that kind of stuff, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. The thing is that was good about Flash. So I was doing a lot of stuff in Illustrator at the time, and like really creative stuff as well. Like I remember building a website that used palm trees for navigation, and a garden design site that the background was all lawn. Like, you just can do that now. But so you used to be able to create all these assets, and then you just Command A, Command C, and then paste it straight into Flash. All the vectors would be there ready for you, and then you could tween over to your heart's desire. And so the barrier to delivering something that was real was really low, But obviously, Flash fell out of favor with the iPhone and stuff. But I thought it was an era of real expression on the web, because browsers were so lacking in what they could do at the time as well. So it was a real nice tool for that, I thought.
yeah, it's never really come back, has it? In terms of, what you can do definitely has with SVG and animation and even CSS on its own now. But yeah, that is the amount of expressiveness and just creativity isn't only returned in like little tiny pockets, whereas it used to be kind of everywhere. It did a detriment to some degree, but at the same time, it is something to be missed.
But I think it's a combination of factors, really. Like the industry had had to evolve and I guess mature a bit, right? But maybe it's gone too far in one or two directions. But it was an inevitability, I think. Really, is like became more of a profession than it had to. I mean, you know this from running an agency yourself, like Rich. It's the demands of a web design project are very different now than what they were 10, 15 years ago, even longer than that. So, but I guess the medium's just evolved to match as well.
Yeah. So Andy alluded to it in the intro, but it's an area of your enthusiasm I see is sort of manifested itself through Piccalilli and the teaching, the tutorials, just having that as the publishing side of things, but publishing stuff that just helps people understand and learn. And where did you find yourself? I mean, I get the feeling that you love doing that. I mean, you spent a long
Very
time
much.
on your CSS guide, and well, it's more than a guide, isn't it? It's a whole. How would you describe it?
I guess it's you call it a course to sort of put the term on it, but it has everything that like and including the articles on Piccalilli. I describe it as hiding vegetables in dinner, where you know when you got young kids and they don't want to eat vegetables, so you blend them up. And so like what I detect in the industry a lot of the time is people want a quick answer, right? They just want, I want to do this and I want to know how to do it like right now. And if it sticks in my brain, then it's irrelevant to me or whatnot. And so we give them that quick answer, but then we also hide in some best practices in that as well. So the CSS course is a great example of that. So the whole marketing behind the course is you're going to transform as a developer, and the unconscious brain might think, yeah, we're gonna write loads of CSS, and you do write loads of CSS, and you might think on a shallow level like that's how I'm going to get better at writing CSS, but it's actually the first half of the course that does that, where teach people how to talk to each other properly, like how to give and receive feedback, and like how to take an initial design concept and work with a designer to bring it to something more web-based, web-friendly, usable, but while maintaining that creative as well. And that's what actually makes you write better CSS, because you're starting off from a much better standpoint. You're starting off from a simpler standpoint. So then you can focus all of your attention on the scalability and the modularity and all of that sort of stuff, rather than how the hell am I going to build this with, like vertical text, which I know you can do CSS quite easily, but like how all of these little bits of excitement on the design, it's like we can still create excitement, but we don't specifically have to do it in a sense that's going to be difficult to build. And so that's what I was really teaching in it. And it is those, I call them core skills, like you call them soft skills, but that stuff is what makes you really good at writing CSS. I've done this for such a long time and in all these different organizations. And fundamentally, that's what the difference is. If there's no core skills in place in the organization, then it doesn't matter how good you are at writing CSS, the output's not going to be as good as if you sort all that fundamental stuff out in the first place. So yeah, that's it really. And that's the thing with Piccalilli as well. That's what I sort of brief guest authors on. It's like, what can you hide in this? What like sage advice have you got from your long career in this industry that you can impart onto someone who wants to learn a concept? And yeah, it seems to be giving us a bit of a niche on that front. Yeah, which is good.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Yeah. Go, Andy.
I went into Manchester to meet up with somebody the other day. So parked my car, came out of the car park, and there is a Waterstones, one of the biggest ones in the middle of Manchester in the Arndale Centre. And years ago, I used to be able to walk in there and head to the web development section, the web design section. And there would be a shelf full of books, mostly written by people that I knew. Andy Budd was in there. I think you were in a couple of sort of co-authored ones.
Simon Collison,
Jeremy,
maybe.
Rachel Andrew, all of the usual suspects. I don't know what the hell I'd find if I walked in there now, because the the landscape, the way that people learn CSS and by extension learn web design has completely changed.
Yeah.
To the extent that, I started writing another book myself last year and got kind of 50% of the way through it and thought, do you know what? There's really not much point in actually producing this as a 200-300 page tome. I would be way better off if I was to put this stuff out as articles or video on YouTube or whatever it might be. So what do you think of that change? It seems to me to be that there's less effort in general being put into the teaching overall.
Yeah. I think that the first part, like the medium evolution, I actually welcome it because mainly because of the way I sort of learned. So I'm not a very good reader. I like reading, but I'm a very sort of impatient person too. So I like to scan, and I find print hard to scan. So like tiny print and stuff. So like, for example, the CSS, that huge CSS book, I can't remember what it's called now, the definitive guide, that's it. I couldn't read that. Not a chance in hell. But if someone created CSS, the definitive guide, that was a sort of web-based with interactive demos and stuff to help me glue those concepts into my brain, then I think I'd get on better with it. So that's why we do courses like we do as well, is that the sort of mixed media stuff, it gives people the opportunity to consume it how they want to consume it. I think that's really important. But on the quality of education, like, obviously we do a lot of research, and there's definitely been a reduction, I'll say that, in quality. I think stuff that upsets me the most, so when we were researching Scott's mindful design course, we got a copy of, I'm not going to say it, like, it was a $2,000 course. And one of the lines of advice in that $2,000 course was, accessibility is important, but if your brand guidelines are accessible, don't worry about it. And it's just like, how can you possibly live with yourself given that sort of advice? Not just from an ethical standpoint, but from a liability standpoint too. Like in America, in the EU as well, like you can have legal consequences for not having an accessible website. And by imparting that sort of advice onto people, then you potentially line them up for litigation problems in the long term. And so I think there's just a bit of an irresponsibility now. Like, one of the things that books probably helped with was that level of quality, because an editor wouldn't let that line through. Like if we had an author writing a course here and that line was in the prose, I'd immediately cut it out and be like, you just cannot say that. You cannot advise that. That's not good. So I think that's partly the problem, is there's not that QA process going on with some of these courses that are getting launched out there. But I think it's just the way we see it, it's like, well, we just have to try and communicate that we're not like that as much as possible when we're sort of pushing our stuff out. But it's a feeling I'm already used to, because agencies also have a bad rep, right? So you spend a lot of the time marketing your agency as like, we're not one of those guys, don't worry. And like the sales process, a lot of it is reassuring people that you're not one of those agencies, in quotes, because like there's a bad taste in people's mouths already there. So it's nothing that I'm not used to. But I do wish there was more of a focus on quality. But I think it's just such as the way that the industry evolves over the years, and it feels like a race to the bottom at points. So yeah, we're just certainly not going to join that race. Yeah.
I think there's a real there is some really great shining lights in terms of CSS education and web development education generally. There are some excellent, really interesting YouTubers, for example, Then there's your stuff with Piccalilli, just to pick on one, and things like the layout book that you did with Hayden as well, things like that.
Yeah, awesome.
But they are kind of few and far between, really, I think, and there's a lot of stuff that falls into that.
Yeah,
accessibility is, is fine if you can do it, but don't worry about it otherwise, sort of situation, and that's part of the problem. And I mean, an issue that I kind of have is, where do you start if you're coming into the industry? Never mind just being like, we know how much stuff there is, and probably how much stuff that we don't know. I mean, I don't class myself as a professional developer, I never have done, but I know quite a bit of stuff, and I certainly got a good sense of what I don't know, and that is a lot. But yeah, it's like, where do you start if you're coming in, if you're drawn to this profession, and then it's like, where do you go for those basics to like get the really good fundamentals right in the first place, and then build upon like anchor positioning and anything else that's coming along that's magic and new. I'm really not sure.
It's a trick one. No, I don't think I know the answer to that. I mean, it would be great to sort of publish that sort of content eventually. Like, it's just, I think the problem is that the starting line is changing almost every year, right? So my heart tells me to tell people, like, you've just got to learn HTML and CSS and JavaScript, right? You learn those fundamental technologies, and you can maneuver and you can mold your skill set depending on the requirements of the job.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about those. It's like I'm just talking about HTML and CSS.
Yeah. So where do you start with them? And like, I don't know. I think how did we learn, right? So it was you had this urge to try it.
Yeah.
And what was it that kept you going? It was the excitement of something going live. Like, I don't think anyone will forget that first time they pushed their website up to an FTP server, and then there's like, oh, my website that I've just been working on is now on the internet, and anyone can see it. That feeling doesn't really go away, and it's like, it's capturing that excitement, right, and engaging people to want to do it. The problem I think now, though, is that so I think web development, when I came into the industry especially, it was a hobby first and a profession second. So people came in with like this, like a creative mindset, and they came in excited about it, and then by chance it's like, oh, now I'm getting paid to do this. This is great. Whereas now I think it's flipped, and I think you come into the industry now, it's like, how do I get a job in this industry? And the most frustrating aspect is like, learning just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is probably not going to get you a job in the industry. You've got to like learn something that's more relevant to what people are looking for, right? So maybe that's a JavaScript framework or a UI framework or something, and that's fine. But it's quite a transactional way of building things, and I don't know if that's going to capture that same excitement. And I think that probably does lead to people having like a shallow skill set as a need to know basis. But then again, web development's a profession first and a hobby second now, I imagine. So I guess it's part of the course. But how do you teach someone from scratch is probably one of the hardest questions to answer, and I certainly don't have the answer for it, I'll tell you. Because how do you capture that wide swath of people with different ability levels and deliver something engaging for them that they actually will walk away with those skills that they need to get a job? It's a very tough thing to answer.
I've touched on this a few times, but I've always bemoaned how design stuff fits into this overall education package. Because, you say, well, somebody starting off in web development needs to learn HTML and CSS and JavaScript. But who's teaching them about actual, you teach them about grid, but who teaches them about layout principles? Or you teach them about, variable fonts, but who teaches them about typographic choices? And I don't know whether anybody is coming out of a college actually having that kind of rounded set of skills, or what I think is even more important, the curiosity that we had to go, Oh, that's interesting. I wonder how they did that. Oh, I could make use of something like that. I'll reverse engineer it and, I'll be inspired by this and make it my own. And I don't know where that happens and how, how we can kind of encourage that because, back in the early days, we had, do you remember CSS website galleries?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
CSS Beauty and the Web Standards Awards and things like that back in the dim and distant past. And at least they were places where, and if you were new to something, you could look at it and you could go, oh, that's really cool. I wonder how Sean Inman did that cool thing, turning a list into a select menu. That was a fun and a cool thing to sit and spend your evening kind of reverse engineering.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. What can kind of bridge that gap?
I think that curiosity is out there. It's just that, when we started out, that's all you had. If you didn't have it, then you weren't anywhere near the industry because you had to have it to get anywhere, really. But we do see it out there. But as you say, we also see, like when we've been hiring in the past, like kind of career developers, if you like, who are they're just trying to find a job to get through the day, to pay the rent, and the curiosity isn't there in a way that was at all exciting to me as someone I'd want to work with, kind of thing. But it is there. Just it's not as prevalent by any means. But at least we still have view source and we have web inspectors, and you can, if you're not just seeing a couple of divs that say insert React here, then
div ID equals root.
Yeah, exactly. Then at least that's still there, and hopefully not going to go away anytime soon.
What are your ambitions? What are your ambitions for Piccalilli? Where do you want? What do you actually really want to do with this?
It's a good question. I think we're having these discussions at the moment. We're doing a bit of evolution, brand evolution on it at the moment. It's a good time of year to be doing it while we're stacked launching 2 courses. But we're having these conversations because it's like, well, how do we start in 2026? Like, what do we do in 2026? And so I've been having these thoughts, like, what do I want it to be in the long term? So, like, for those who've not heard of Piccalilli, it started off as a newsletter, and then it evolved into my blog, and then it went away for a couple of years because I founded an agency, and all time disappeared all of a sudden. And then we brought it back to life last year, and when we brought it back to life last year, it was at a time when CSS Tricks had just sort of vanished all of a sudden, and at least the part wasn't publishing much anymore, and there was this hole there, and I was like, we need to fill that hole with Piccalilli, I think, because people still need those sorts of articles. So that was our prime focus, and obviously I did a course as well, but like that was the prime focus, was like, we need to build the reputation of Piccalilli back up again to where it was once upon a time. And I think we did that last year. So then, like, going on now, it's like, well, we want to be the canonical resource. So like, we want to be, so like, when someone asks the question of where can I go and read good articles about web design and web development, the first answer that comes to people's brains is Piccalilli. Like that would be ideal. That would be the best situation. And I feel like we could probably get there with that, but to do that, you've just got to constantly and consistently be putting out really high quality stuff, and we're really trying. We've had a few hiccups here and there, but that's what we're really pushing towards now, is that, like, never losing the quality. We're not chasing ad revenue, we're not chasing clicks, we're chasing just quality and being known for that quality. And I think as long as we maintain that, then I think that's eventually where we may end up, and that'll be fantastic. It's very much becoming the focus of the company now, as Piccalilli, where it was this, like, last year, it was a side project, and then it's just completely flipped. So, like, and we're more than happy with that flip also. So we're just going to keep plugging on and keep building that reputation and hoping it works out good in the long term.
Yeah, I was going to ask where Set Studio came into things, whether that was sort of funding your ambitions with Piccalilli, or how those two parts of your company professional life actually work together.
Yeah, so obviously like Set Studio is the parent and it's the main thing, but over the space of the last sort of 18 months, if you were to put like two charts, you'd put the studio like dipping and then you'd put Piccalilli like suddenly rising. And we had these conversations internally this year where it was, I mean, you probably know this as well from this year. It's like the type of inquiries have changed quite a lot over the last 12 months. And there's less excitement for what's coming in. So there's interesting problems to solve. But then when you look at what like the aspirations are, like the deliverables, the KPIs, and it's like we were losing a lot of like love for it between us. Like there's four of us in the studio, and between us we've got like over 50 years of experience. So we've all been around the block for a long time, and we had this like real honest conversation. It's like, is this making us happy anymore? Like, are we happy doing these sorts of projects? We'd had a couple of quite tricky ones last year that really tested us, and so the Piccalilli was growing. It's like, I just basically said it. I was like, I'm happy pushing focus onto Piccalilli if everyone else is happy doing that. And overwhelmingly, the answer to that was yes, let's do it, because we all love working on it internally. Like it's a big team operation, like running that thing. And I think like Leanne and Jason are like Leanne's our tech lead and Jason design. Like it's a different pace for them that they actually really enjoy. Like they've only ever worked in client services, so doing this more like, I guess, product like cycle of work and a roadmap and doing things like that, they're able to do the best work they've done in their careers, and that makes me really happy to do that. And so yeah, we've just run with the momentum really and let it happen. And I think if I was to predict like what it looks like in another 12 months, it might be the case that we only do one client project a year and then the rest of it's on Piccalilli, and that I'd be quite happy with that, to be honest. So yeah, it seems to be going in the direction we want it to go, even during this, what's definitely been one of the hardest years in the industry, without a doubt. I've been saying all year this is harder than 2020. It's 2025, so it's been a tough one.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky times. Times. Well, I would certainly advise anyone to subscribe to The Index, your bi-weekly newsletter. I love it.
Thank you.
It's 5, isn't it? 5 like super quality CSS kind of related links, not just CSS, but like a lot of stuff in that direction. Yeah, I look forward to it coming every time. I think it's it's a great thing.
So that's been a big part of this year, is the Index. Like we properly branded it. We did all of that sort of groundwork on it this year, and I just had this like these principles of like every newsletter I get, almost every newsletter I get, is too big. There's too much stuff in it. There's like 20 odd links in it. There's lots of graphics and stuff that's like distracting me, and I really used to like getting sidebar, and I know it was every single day, and I know it's back now, but a pale imitation of itself. But you could guarantee, like I had this, like I remember it being at least one of those links every day was good. So like you could guarantee that you're going to get one good curated link a day in your RSS feed, in your RSS reader, sorry. And that's always like, but even if you're like a subscriber to the old Piccalilli newsletter back in the day, like that was always the core of it. Was like, it's just a small collection of links that are curated, like stuff I found on the internet, and I want to share it with the people. And it works really well because I actually really enjoy curating it. Like it's a really good, every Wednesday morning and every Friday. So you don't get any scheduling with the Index. When it arrives in your inbox, I've pushed it to main 10 minutes beforehand. You know, like it comes in hot. And like I've got this big list of links that I collect on Obsidian. I love going through and like, what's the theme today? Like, what am I gonna try and combine to develop a theme? So what I like to do on a Friday night is like all the cool stuff that I found. It's like I'm just going to put all that together on a Friday because everyone's chilling out. And then on a Wednesday, it's like, okay, what good education resources have I found this week? Like, what good articles have I read? And try and find a commonality between them all. And then the idea that it does feel genuinely curated and pleasurable for people to read. So yeah, I'm glad you feel like that because that's the intended outcome.
Yeah.
Well, it
it's
popped
bang on.
into my inbox earlier on today. So
Good.
you mentioned our old friend Rob Wakert.
Oh, one of the best in the business. Yeah.
And some crazy guy that actually made a web server out of a disposable vape, which I thought was
which we seem to have pulled down in the process of sharing it on the index. It seems to have gone down. So yeah, it's serving a lot of traffic all of a sudden. But yes, it's hilarious. Funny.
Yeah, but I like the fact
Yeah.
that you've got to have discipline to do that. If you're going to have an audience that's kind of not waiting on your every newsletter, but will be expecting something.
Consistency.
Keeping the quality and keeping the cadence is, I mean, I struggle with that.
It's all about having a good process for it. Like I spend, and this is partly why I'm really happy that Piccalilli is becoming a focus for us because it frees up so much time for me specifically to do what I actually want to do. Like weirdly enough, I don't want to be spending all day emailing people and filling out spreadsheets and chasing things and doing all that, which tends to be my role in the agency. But what I'm doing more now is actually spending time reading things and spending time like devouring the internet and then distilling it for people because no one's got time to devour the internet, right? So it's just helping people do that. So yeah, finding things that are really good is very pleasurable, but you have to be disciplined, like you're saying. You have to be organized. So for me, it's the thing for me is how easy is it for me to store a link, and like that low barrier to entry has me just constantly filling up this massive obsidian base now is just full of links all the time, and then carving out time of your day. So the first thing I do on a Wednesday and a Friday, I don't do anything else, is I'm going to curate the index to start the day, and then it just always puts me in a good mood. So it's worth doing like that, And a lot of stuff gets filtered out. So, I'll probably save 50 or 60 links a week. And then the curation process for me then is like, okay, I'm actually going to read this article properly now. And then, okay, maybe that doesn't make the cut, that one. And it's like really refining what I've already saved. And the best part of it is I've now got this file on my computer that's full of links. So like even the ones that don't make it in the index, I've just got this huge collection of links. So maybe after another year, because it's all marked down, I could just turn it into an 11T blog roll or something. But there you go. Here's all the links I've saved in the past 12 months. Enjoy. Yeah, read them at your leisure. All 10,000 of them or whatever.
I'm glad you enjoy it because I think we need things that we enjoy at the moment. It seems to be a bit of a difficult time emotionally for a lot of people for an awful lot of really good reasons.
Oh, God, yeah.
So
yeah,
finding that pleasure and that passion in things, that enthusiasm for doing something, rather than producing elevator music is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a responsibility to provide a bit of relief from the horrors, which is it also prevents me from mainlining the horrors on Blue Sky or whatever as well. Like having that responsibility to send out a newsletter twice a week forces you to read things that are not people's hot takes on what's going on. And yeah, I think it does mental health quite a good job. Because I think if I didn't do that and I just consumed the horrors live, I think I would lose my mind completely. So yeah, I think that's the takeaway here, Andy. Find something fun to do.
I'm spending this week finishing off a layout design course that I've been working on.
Oh, nice.
And I always like to have a sort of a site theme of everything that I'm building. And this particular one is a breakfast greasy spoon cafe that's run by Elton John. But it's not Elton John, it's like Reg Dwight. So if Reg Dwight hadn't become Elton John and he just run a greasy spoon cafe, what would the menu look like? What would the dishes be called? Don't go breaking my yolk, don't let hash brown go down on me. All of these things, and I've just been having so much fun sniggering to myself as I make all of the examples for these sort of silly design layouts. And whether or not anybody notices them or smirks at them doesn't really matter. But I've had fun doing it.
Yeah, I think it's really important, like that like humor and a wink at other stuff. Like, I'm editing Matt Marquis' course at the moment, and I'm sat there with a shit-eating grin the whole time because, like, Matt, as you know, like, he doesn't just write in that dry, technical manner, even though like the content like is super technical, but he just constantly just does these little one-liners and like cultural references and stuff, and it's like that. I think that's what keeps people engaged in content more than anything else, is that, like in your case, you've got that like pseudo real context that's humorous as well, and then in Matt's it's like pulling in all of these cultural references, but those cultural references actually help the concept stick in your brain. I never forget Jake Archibald. I couldn't get my head around promises in JavaScript for the love of nothing, and he wrote an article and he described, so he got a thenable, it's called, like the then or catch. And he said just remember it as Terry Venables from football. And that was it. And it was just like click. And I was like, this concept now works in my head. Yeah, it's like you gotta put Terry Venables after your fetch.
It does date us. It does date us.
Yeah, though. It does, yeah.
The best England manager we never had. Actually, no, that was Brian Clough. Yeah. So before we leave, I do have to ask you the most important question of the day, which is, would Wrexham beat Manchester United on Saturday if they were playing?
I think they would, yeah. I think anyone could beat Man United at the moment. It's not fun being a United fan at the moment, I must say. Especially because I was born in '87, right? So I grew up watching United in their sort of prime era. So like it's been 10 years since Sir Alex retired, so we've experienced some bad over those 10 years, but it just seems to be even worse these days. But you just got to keep going, got to keep supporting them.
I
don't think Wrexham would beat Bradford City though.
We've had a bad start to the season. Yeah. 1 point in 5 games. It's like it's not been a good start to the season. But
it's the big jump from League One to the Championship.
It's a huge jump to League One and to the Championship, and it's pretty much a new team. The signings that they made over the transfer window were huge. So I'm sure it's going to take a little bit of time. My Instagram feed is social media feeds are full of kind of like stupid, dodgy reports about how they're going to sack Phil Parkinson because he hasn't won enough already. Yeah. But it's it is tough. So sorry to audience for bringing it back to football, but I couldn't help but rib Andy about Manchester United.
Rib me all day. You can't hurt me. I'm already hurt enough. Man United do a great job of doing that every weekend, negatively affecting my mental health. But obviously, I'm from Bradford, so I do have a massive soft spot for Bradford City. So I do like to keep an eye on them as well. And I'm glad to see them doing well. They did exactly the same as Wrexham. They bought loads of players this season, but it seems to have worked for them, and it will work for Wrexham. They're gonna need to settle, I think. But good club though, Wrexham, very good club.
So should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up.
Well, I've really enjoyed this. One of the things that we didn't get to talk about, which I really do want to kind of talk about at some point, because I'm interested in it from a personal point of view in terms of how I make my stuff, is actually what goes into producing and then selling and marketing one of your courses. So if you wouldn't mind, we'd love to have you back at some point and maybe go into a bit more depth, because I'm sure people would be really interested in exactly how much work goes into actually putting these things out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Definitely do that. Spoiler alert, shitloads. But yeah, it's probably a lot of work people don't realise happens as well. Yeah, so we'll definitely do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, thanks for coming, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
I do love a down-to-earth Yorkshireman. Even as a Lancashire lad, I appreciate a Yorkshireman.
Yeah, as a southerner, I do have a certain grudging respect for northerners. So from both sides of the Pennines.
He's
from being from Yorkshire and then supporting Man United. That doesn't sound right, does it?
No, not when Leeds are just over the road.
Yeah, but who are Leeds nowadays?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's another one of these clubs that have had massive rich heritage over the years, and they all go up and down, like design agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, really interesting to hear how
publishers.
Yeah, well, definitely, and interesting to hear how Andy's ambition is to pivot from design agency to publisher. All the while, publishers are starting to disappear. Although I guess publishers of more conventional materials and thinking the book apart and stuff like that, whereas Andy's going a slightly different route.
Well, you see, he referred to it as a product. I was gonna ask him about this, and then it went by. But he talked about it as being like a product rather than being like a publisher.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I think when you have a course like that, and it is a course, and it perhaps gives you more opportunities, and you're not tied into the thing as a book or books that you need to sell and ship and all the rest of it, and the fact that most of it's digital and suits Andy's, I guess, way of learning, which I'm sure would be reflected in a lot of other people as well. It's like when I mentioned Every Layout, the book that he did with
really
Hayden
good.
Pickering, which is really good, yeah. And I call it a book, but it's not a book you can buy as such. It's a website, essentially. But because it's a website, it reads like a really good book, but it reads like a sort of a sequence of articles. But you can cut and paste straight out of it. That's helpful. You can't do that with a book. You can do it all right with an ebook. But mind you, I'm doing a second edition to my book, which I intend to publish as a physical artifact. So, and an ebook, but I think that's just because it's a passion project as much as anything else. I'm looking at this thing on the shelf thinking, yeah, that was good, but there's bits in it that are missing. There's bits that are out of date, and I can't have it sitting there not being as up to date as I know it can be.
Well, I sat down while we were on holiday and was just working out some things, and working out the calendar and the schedule, and I've got a couple of projects towards the end of the year, probably starting October time. And I thought, right, what am I going to do we get back from holiday in September? And I thought, well, I know what I'll do is I'll take some of the stuff that I've been working on and turn it into a layout design workshop. So, this episode is sponsored by Andy's Layout Design Workshop, link in the description. But then I thought, well, hang on a minute, that I could actually go into more detail in lots of these different areas. So I've got a plan actually now to produce 4 1-hour video courses. Now, I could put those up on Skillshare or Udemy. I could offer to sell them to, exclusively to a Envato type organization or whatever. But I can also take what I will write script-wise and image-wise and put those into a PDF, do an ebook, which I could sell myself, or even, sell on Amazon or do whatever. So I think a lot of it is sort of repurposing the content in different formats for different media and different outlets. But like Andy, I don't want to necessarily be driven by or limited by, a platform like Skillshare. Yes, it puts it in front of millions of eyeballs, thousands of eyeballs, but it's a bit like Spotify. You don't earn very much per eyeball.
Yeah.
So I think it's that kind of balance about growing your audience, which he seems to have done really well with Piccalilli so far.
Yeah, and I think it can be much more, if you can do that, I think it can be much more rewarding because then you have that control over things. But as Andy intimated at the end there, it takes a lot of time and effort to do that. But I think the rewards can be there. And just thinking about what you were saying there about your layout course, just something like that I'd love to see is, it's a reaction, I guess, to some degree to layouts being just like a sequence of horizontal slats, one on top of the other, and that's pretty much all you get. And how layout doesn't have to be that. But I think one of the things I'd love to, that I would want to get from a course like that, is how you break out of that mindset. How do you start to think? I almost said outside of the box, but that's probably almost literally what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's having a confidence, but then also that imagination about, and a sense of what can be done, which is why I think, having those, here's a bunch of different layouts that you could use that would just get your mind working. But this is a sense of the direction that you could go in, like the way of thinking to get from slats to actually something far more interesting and impactful and effective.
Well, what I've been trying to do is draw on my kind of collection of research and examples from different media, whether it will be magazines or fanzines or comic books or whatever it might be, not all in print, and then just to kind of use little bits and say, well, hey, if you want to create this different sort of mood, you might be wanting to kind of go down this route. So I'm trying to keep it practical too. I'm trying to keep it so that it's not just kind of airy-fairy made-up content, although it is made-up content, but it is something where people can go, yeah, but I could actually, apply that process or that principle to, my flange making business.
Yes. And that's the difference between, design and art. It's a creative endeavor, but it's not art. It has purpose beyond its existence. It's trying to achieve, these layouts and the websites that they're on, are there for a reason, and they're supporting other people's organizations, as speaking as someone who'd used them from a professional context.
Next Thursday, you're more than welcome to pop into my workshop. I'll send you a link.
Oh, super.
If you're lucky, I might even send you a discount code.